ladies and gentlemen. It is both an honor and a privilege to welcome all of you this evening. This is indeed a special evening because our program this evening begins with music. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Atul Merchant, known to many of you by his pen name Jatayu. A lifelong student of music and Vedanta philosophy, Mr. Merchant's journey reflects a rare blend of artistic pursuit, intellectual curiosity, and a spiritual inquiry. He has had the privilege of being the disciple of the legendary Annapurna Devi, one of the most revered figures in Hindustani classical music, and has devoted decades to studying and preserving her rich musical legacy. Mr. Atul Merchant's interest extends far beyond today's performance. He's a poet, he's an author, he's a composer, and he's a multidisciplinary thinker whose work bridges music, literature, philosophy, and culture. His acclaimed book on Sri Annapurna Devi has helped illuminate the life and contributions of a musical genius for new generations of readers and music lovers. This evening, he joins us not only as a musician, but as a passionate ambassador of India's rich musical heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Atul Merchant.
She talked about Vedanta. Music originated in Samaveda, 3000 BC, that is little more than 5,000 years. There is a remarkable similarity between Vedanta, the most ancient scriptures, and quantum physics, the most modern scientific theory. Both assert that perceived world is merely an illusion. And anyone who claims to have understood it hasn't understood it. The same is said about music. Both Acharya Alauddin Khan, the greatest musicians of the century, and Albert Einstein, the greatest scientist, regarded music as profound mystery. Many others say the same. Let's take a moment to delve into this mystery. We human beings call ourselves rational animals. If this be true and not self-adulation, then music is the most rational activity we most frequently engage ourselves in. The word rational originates from the word ratio, the quantitative relationship. In music, the frequencies of the scale, sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa, are in precise mathematical ratios. Sa is the base note. All other notes, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa, are in relative distance from sa. The frequency ratio between sa and upper sa is 2 to 1, that is 200%, precise double. Every octave it doubles. Sa pa is in ratio of 3 to 2, 150%, halfway. Sa ga is in ratio of 5 to 4, 125%, quarter. So on and so forth, all the notes. Frequencies of this symmetric proportion evoke various emotions in our brains. And this whole thing is about brain. All perceptions are generated by the brain within the brain, be it light or sound, unless and until processed by the brain, there are all waves. If no brain, no perception, no sight, no sound, no music, no feelings, no sensations. Let's listen to music with this awareness. We now request Pandit Nityanand Haldipur to take the stage. Flute is world's oldest instrument, yet it remained a folk instrument until Pandit Pannalal Ghosh, under the tutelage of Acharya Alauddin Khan, transformed it into classical music instrument. And we are extremely lucky in front of us, Panna Babu and Nikhil Ghosh's daughter. Tulikaji, please. The same Panna Babu initiated Nityanand in music. Pandit Nityanand Haldipur is a disciple of legendary Annapurna Devi. He is rated as the top grade artist by All India Radio. He is recipient of several prestigious awards, including Tansen Award and Sangeet Natak Academy Award. Today he is going to render Rag Marwa. What is Rag? Shastra says, Ranjayati iti ragaha. What evokes emotions is Rag. Music is an art of storytelling. Every story has an element of conflict and resolution, tension and relief. In Rag Marwa, the focus is more on conflict and tension than resolution and relief. Such combination of notes leads the listeners yearning for the relief and resolution, which arrives but after a deliberate delay. On tabla, we have Pandit Gurushan Singh, disciple of Pandit Sadadan Nayanpalli, and on tanpura, we have Shri Prakash Nayak.
Mesmerizing. Thank you, Pandit Haldipurji. Music has a unique ability to touch parts of the human experience that words often cannot reach. This evening's recital reminded us of such profound connection between art, emotion, and the human spirit. May I now request Mr. Atul Merchant to please kindly felicitate Pandit Haldipur as our small token of appreciation. Pandit Haldipur ji. We now come to the central purpose of this evening. There are individuals whose achievements can be measured by awards, publications, positions, and professional milestones. And then there are individuals whose true impact is reflected in the lives they have touched, the minds they have influenced, and the hope they have restored. Tonight, we are gathered to celebrate one such individual. For more than 5 decades, Dr. Ashit Sheth has dedicated his life to understanding, healing, and nurturing the human mind. As a psychiatrist, teacher, author, mentor, and public educator, he has helped countless individuals navigate life's challenges and discover strengths within themselves that they never even knew existed. His academic journey has been one of the most exceptional ones. He stood first in both his MBBS and MD examinations, went on to serve as the honorary, I wish I had that, went on to serve as the honorary professor of psychiatry at KEM Hospital and GS Medical College, became an honorary psychiatrist at the Bombay Hospital. I see, so there are some fans from Bombay Hospital, and contributed extensively to the psychiatric literature through numerous publications, textbook chapters, lectures, and educational initiatives. His work has helped shape not only patients, but also families, and generations of healthcare professionals. Yet, what makes Dr. Ashit Sheth truly remarkable is not simply the breadth of his accomplishments, but the depth of his commitment to human potential. It is perhaps no coincidence that his practice came to be known as unlimited potentialities. Throughout his career, he has championed the belief that every individual possesses an extraordinary capacity for growth, resilience, healing, and transformation. Whether through psychiatry, hypnotherapy, teaching, writing, public speaking, photography, is there anything remaining? Or documenting filmmaking, he has consistently sought to illuminate the possibilities that lie within the human mind and spirit. In honoring Dr. Sheth this evening, we are not merely recognizing a distinguished medical career, we are celebrating a lifetime devoted to compassion, learning, service, and the betterment of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the guest of honor for this evening, Dr. Ashit Sheth.
ladies and gentlemen. I'll give a short introduction of me taking up psychiatry and why I made this particular documentary. When I finished my MBBS, I came to Bombay and then I declared that I want to take up psychiatry. The whole family, a big family, revolted and said, "The pagla doctor hai." And my uncle, who was the superintendent of Nanavati Hospital, told me, "Ashit, come here." And he was a little concerned. And he cautiously said, "Just think twice before you take up a psychiatry." I said, "Why, sir?" He said that psychiatry is a branch of medicine where the cause is unknown. Diagnosis lingers in uncertainty, and all the treatments are empirical. This was the impression which was carried by the medical people about psychiatry. Then he whispered in my ears, "See, I know many psychiatrists in Bombay, and many a times it is very difficult to differentiate between patients and doctors." So now I knew that what am I going into, because Kazan Takis, the famous author who got a Nobel Prize, said that if you want to be happy, you have to be little mad. And this is my profession which I want into. So then what happened was, what was the psychiatry at that time? It was an unknown continent lying in a thick fog. Our treatments were definitely empirical. Before that, incidentally, it so happened that my wife Rekha, who came into my life, also came from a minor branch, and everybody kept on saying that both your branches, psychiatry and dermatology, is such branches where nobody dies, nobody gets better, and you have got a lifetime commitment with the patient. Anyway, I must say that she very patiently tolerated me. In my eccentricity and madness, very patiently she tolerated me. She went ahead of me and academically became brilliant and established a cosmetic dermatology, and that light which she lit on cosmetic dermatology is now being carried over by my children, and they are looking after her clinic very well, successfully. It was unfortunate that we lost her 6 years back to pancreatic cancer. I joined KM Hospital as a student. Excellent teachers I had, wonderful training I had. And I'm indebted to these particular teachers who devoted hours together teaching us psychiatry, which was a vague subject. And I remember Dr. Dungaji telling us that psychiatry is a vague subject and you have to be very definite. At that time, Dr. Dungaji retired and I retired, and we worked together. We produced 4 audiovisuals. That was the science, sound and slide shows. One on pain was presented as a curtain raiser at an international conference of pain in New Delhi, and we got a standing ovation. This was an elementary, very, very attempt on our side to present something. These were the pain people who were discovering analgesics. And what do we teach about pain? So we went into sadism, masochism, loss of my child. Anish acted as a person who had no pain, his absence of pain, and we put him in all plasters because they keep on hurting themselves. So as I said, when I entered into psychiatry, it was a continent completely in thick fog. Things have changed. Things have changed to the level where various imaging CAT scans, MRIs, functional MRIs, PET scans have made this landscape of brain little brighter. They've illuminated what is causing mental illness, and we know that major mental illness is associated with the brain problem. But still, we are in infancy. It is said that in 1930s and 40s, up to 1970s, we were hanging into mindful but brainless psychiatry. The Freudian era, which had established that a talking therapy was the only therapy. Today's medication has done wonders, and now today we are in the situation where I can say it's a brainful, mindful psychiatry. We have come a long way, but let me tell you that mental illness is one of the toughest illnesses in medical profession. The cause of this illness is psychological. No, there are biological causes and sociological causes. Every mind is getting influenced by the sociological factors. And we have a person who is a very strict father will create a problem. I used to joke around and say, when I see anybody beating a child on the road, I say, there's one more patient for me. But now we are understanding what is causing this cause, the trauma and the effect of trauma. But still, in spite of all the investigations, psychiatry has remained a clinical. Our weapon is to establish a good doctor-patient relationship and get all the available information from the patient and the relatives. But despite all, the statistics shows 80 to 85% patients in India who are seriously mentally ill do not get adequate care. There are two stigmas a patient feels. His personal stigma of getting a label of a psychiatric illness and the social pride and prejudices which influences these patients severely. लोग क्या कहेंगे? हमारे घर में एक पगला है, वो क्या कहेंगे? On that pretext, many of the illnesses are not treated. Many patients are not brought, or treatments are delayed when the patient becomes violent. But let me tell you, majority of the mental patients are not violent. They're suffering in silence. They don't have the language and they don't have the acceptance. The social fear is also very strong. And there is another type of fear and another stigma when a person suffering from severe anxiety and depressions are told, you should ignore all this. थोड़ा तुम 40 हनुमान 40 लिखो ना, सब ठीक हो जाएगा. पूजा पाठ करो, योगा करो, एक्सरसाइज करो, तो तबीयत अच्छा बनेगा ना. But some stigmas are cultural. I have kept a big waiting room because every patient is accompanied by 4 or 5 relatives. I get a lot of patients from Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh and all that. And every patient is accompanied by 4 or 5 relatives. 2 are genuinely concerned person, but the rest of them come to see the spectator. And among them is one eldest person who has a repertoire of advice through his experience. And what is the advice? A person is unmarried, uski shadi kar do na. A couple is fighting very badly. अरे बच्चा होगा ना तो सब सेटल हो जाएगा. And another stigma today in a modern age in the media, every prescription is scrutinized by Google, ChatGPT, Gemini AI, friends, relatives, sent it over to the astrologers and approved that yes, I can take this treatment. No. All the side effect lists is brought to me and a lot of fear. Ye mere ko hoga, wo mere ko hoga, wo mere ko hoga. Now we have to manage these patients. The only thing what we have at our disposal is doctor-patient relationship. Also, let me tell you, these medicines have been so useful that we have been able to treat majority of the patients at home without hospitalization, and also avoid unnecessary investigations, because somatic manifestations of mental illness is very, very common. I have drifted various paths. I've been analyzed, psychoanalyzed. I've joined the behavior therapy. I know hypnosis. I have indulged myself in philosophy, mentalizing therapy, but my pet subject has remained psychopharmacology. After 50 years also, I still feel ignorant. Every patient offers me an enigma, which testus also can't fulfill. Everybody is a puzzle which I have to solve. Somebody asked me, why do you make a video documentary on music? Let me tell you, as a curious person, I thought why music is so powerful in our society. We are born listening to lullabies and people die listening to bhajans. The music is a denominator, a companion. And imagine a society without a music. Can you ever imagine a society, it has a new music, then it is not a society? Music binds people together. Music has a strong binding capacity. It secretes oxytocin, which we'll see a little bit in our documentary. But the most important part, it's a psychobiological phenomena, because if the society sticks together, they can share the skills, they can share the knowledge, they can transmit the knowledge further into society, so society prospers and becomes richer. That's why the music fascinated me. And where do you understand the music? The music you understand in that 1.5 kilo of that pulpy thing which is lying between your ears, the brain. That's why brain makes music. So before I end, I would like to introduce a great teacher, a person who is everything. When I made my documentary, I was scratching my head and saying, whom do I show that it is acceptable? Something stupid I made. The one person's name kept on revolving in my head. The only one person who can be familiar, and I've heard about it, I've read about it, and I read about his book in which he has written about music, Tabiat. He wrote about his music and medicine. So I very hesitantly took his appointment, went and told Sir, I made this documentary, do you mind seeing it? He left his chair, came and sat next to me. I was moved. My heart was thumping, my blood pressure must have shot up. I started showing him my documentary. He watched it carefully. At the end of it, I said, "Sir, how was it?" Fantastic. Those were the most healing sound I had heard. And as a Banya, I wanted to have a little more. Can you inaugurate this audiovisual for me? He said, yes. You fix up with my secretary. I'm going out of town, arrange a date accordingly. It's a privilege to introduce Dr. Farooq Udwaria. I am inadequate to introduce him. His laurels are known to you. His name is known to you. His academic work is known to you. But to briefly just cover up, he is awarded Padma Bhushan by Government of India. He is awarded B.C. Roy for his teaching abilities. He is awarded Dhanvantari Award for his contribution to medicine. He was instrumental in establishing tetanus ward in JJ Hospital, which reduced the mortality. Once upon a time, I have seen patients dying of tetanus. And his contribution was that tetanus, the mortality went from 80 to 20%. He was instrumental in establishing a critical care unit at Bridge Candy Hospital, where late Annapurna Devi got a new life under his care. Wait. He has written 2 plays, professionally produced and performed. His play, Onanga, Oganna, is on Albert Schweitzer, Nobel Prize winner, physician who spent his life in Equatorial Africa, living all the luxuries in Europe. His another play was performed 2 months back. Was a doctor where Boman Irani acted as Rustam Irani, and at the end of the play, he had a standing ovation. His book Tabiat, as I mentioned, consists of various esoteric subjects, and music and medicine is 1 chapter. He is a true doctor. He believes that dealing with human suffering, read poetry, literature, get a good idea of what suffering is. If you can appreciate your patient's suffering, then only you can treat patients. He further states that medicine is an art and science. Curing and healing are not exactly synonymous. Curing is the science when you cure a person of a disease or infection. But healing involves a mind-body complex. And that's an important distinction. And healing lasts much longer and it takes time. And doctor-patient relationship is a key for the healing a patient. If I want to describe his career in just short words, I would say there are 3 P's. Passion, patience, and persistence. He has received number of awards. He has written beautiful literature. Academically, he is extremely good. He is the person who wrote a book on eosinophilia and respiratory disease. His medical emergencies was in subcontinent of Asia. It was the first book which was published. He is a musician and a painter. Despite all these achievements, he is a humble doctor. For a person like him, I am reminded of a quote by Tony Robbins. His passion is the genesis of genius. Thank you very much, Dr. Udwaria.
Dr. Ashit Sheth, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk on music. Music of which I'm really passionately fond. Including in this talk also will be music and medicine, but I am going to give you an overall perspective of music. I'm going to start with a quotation. In this world, there is nothing so close to prayer as music is. Music is an innate feature of the human psyche. It is deeply rooted in human nature, and it remains a fundamental aspect of practice and tradition, an attribute in the human species. Millions of people today listen to music. You have music in concert halls, theaters, on your computer. You have music on your phone, you have music in temples, you have music in churches. Music all the time. Millions of people have been affected by music. Some have a lifetime of music, particularly those in the entertainment industry. And almost everyone in one's lifespan has had good experiences with music. We listen to music. We keep time to music. We sing, we dance, we sway when music makes us do so. There's music all the time. In fact, the world is filled with the sound of music. When did music appear? As Doctor has said, there is no culture in this world that has ever been without music. It began with Paleolithic man. You observe paintings on cave walls made by Paleolithic man of dancing men and women. And on the floor has been found bones, the femur, so fashioned and so cut so that it serves as a flute. So basically, music and dancing were born together for all practical purposes. Paleolithic man also drew animals on the walls, showing their activity mainly hunting, enabling them, picturing them so that they could identify them and hunt for them. Music was interwoven, however, with all activity even at that age. So the influence of music in that age can never really be determined, but it must have been quite a lot. And then came the minstrel, singing songs of past, of glory, of virtue, of morals, of great people in the past. And that's how language became, and that's how speech became. It gave a cohesiveness to society and a support to the individual to help him face the vicissitudes of life and living. Now we may ask, what does music do? And there's a man, or rather an erudite person who's written a lot on music called Storr, Dr. Storr, S-T-O-R-R. And he said, music communicates with people. A rather very mundane and plebeian statement compared to, for example, the great composer Stravinsky, not so modern, in the 30s, when he said, music is a communion between man and his fellow men, and a communion with the eternal spirit. That's a beautiful way how music acts. Now, there is a saying that the beginning of music led to an adaptability of humans. I am not quite sure what it really means. But when we come down to brass tacks, we know that the human brain is so constructed that it can distinguish music from noise. And how does it do that? It does that because it can recognize tones, it can recognize tunes, it can recognize rhythm, and it can recognize different musical expressions. But how does it do that? I think all art is a manifestation of the internal, innate psyche of a human being. An expression which has so evolved over time that it had left its imprint, as I say, on the DNA of the human species. That's the best way I can explain it. How did music originate? What is the origin of music? I love the origin of Indian music. All things great and beautiful in India are attributed to the gods, to religion, to philosophy. So music is the gift of the gods. Sound is of two sorts, according to Indian philosophy, Indian religion. Sound produced by the vibration of ether. Sound produced by the vibration of ether is the delight of the gods. Pythagoras of Greece called it the sound of the spheres, spheres meaning the heavenly bodies. And the second sound is a sound produced by the vibration of air. That is the sound produced by man. Now, is there a relation between the two? And this is really beautiful. The first note that you hear, remember, doesn't come by itself. It emerges from the silence that has preceded it. And the last note that you hear is not the last note. It is really a note which is followed by silence which follows it. That's a beautiful thought. Now, if you look at it metaphysically, it is even more beautiful. Perhaps you could say that we are not just isolated beings. We have come from the Supreme Being. We live our existence and go back to the Supreme Being. So that's how it is, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the Western world, it's not that they are not religious, it's not that they are not philosophical. They're rather logical, and they wanted a reason for it. How did music originate? Was it from the brooks, water running in the brooks, the streams, the rustling of the wind through the trees, the leaves, etc.? Not really. Not really. Was it a bird song? Beautiful bird song. The thrush, the bird thrush, is supposed to have been capable of singing 7 songs differently and mixed up together. But if that had been so, primitive man would have been singing like the birds. But it's far from it. What came first? Speech or song? Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who was the father of the French Revolution, said that it was song which preceded speech. And Charles Darwin also thought that it was music that came first and speech came next. But the current view of how music is supposed to have started, according to the West, is remarkable. They say that it is the prosodic exchange between the mother and the infant, the sound that the mother makes and the child makes in return, which forms the basis of music. I find that difficult to understand. So let's say for all practical purposes, it's difficult to find out how music really originated. But we must remember that nothing stands still in the world. The history of the world is a chronicle of change, and the history of music also is a chronicle of change. So music evolved. In our world, in India, for example, from the hymns in the Vedas to what we have the ragas today, and even their modification in current modern practice. Whereas in the Western world, there were the Gregorian chants, very much like the Buddhist chants. Chants by groups of people who would chant, chant, chant. That was their music. But it's unimaginable that this primitive chant has evolved into music which is played by numbers of instruments, by numerous people, sometimes all sitting together in huge concert halls, where people of 100 people make music, playing symphonies for people to listen to and to admire, and also for people playing in groups or people playing singly as virtuosos. So music unquestionably has evolved. I want to talk now of music and the mind. The sound waves produced by music go through the external ear into the tympanic membrane, into the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates, it activates the ossicles, which activates the cochlea, the hair in the cochlea, and that activates conduction through the auditory nerve. Now, the appreciation of music, the decoding of music, is really not to be put to one center anatomically. There are numerous connections, and probably the interplay and the interconnections between the centers gives you really the picture of what music is. Anyway, for example, pitch is supposed to be in the temporal lobe. Chords, which is pitches all placed together, also in the temporal lobe. And pitch in time means melody. Harmony also is in the temporal lobe. And next to it, close to that, is a center which appreciates timbre. Timbre is the quality of sound. Two people singing the same tune, the timbre, the quality of the sound may be different. That is timbre. Rhythm is supposed to be in the cerebellum. Emotive parts of music are supposed to be in the frontal lobes. Music also stimulates the reward centers, which are present in the hypothalamus and near and about the hypothalamus. But the most important thing, which I find impossible to answer, how are sound waves? Different amplitude, different wavelengths, different frequency. How are those sound waves decoded in the brain and made into music? This is really a mystery which science really has. I mean, you can give any amount of explanation, but how? What is the mechanism? What is the neurochemistry which makes these sound waves produced in different forms, mixed up sometimes, and translated in what we hear as music? I think it is really a mystery which needs, I think, to be solved. Question arises now that music, injury to the brain or damage to the brain can produce changes in musicality. And I'd like to give you some examples. A great neurologist called MacDonald Critchley, I think in the 1930s, late 30s or so, described what is called musicogenic epilepsy, which means one of his patients, for example, hearing music, suddenly had a fit. He was a great art critic. He was a great music critic. That was his livelihood. That was his profession. And he found sooner or later that every time he heard some sort of music, he would get a fit. And ultimately it came to the point where the slightest music produced an epileptic seizure, either a full seizure or a temporal epilepsy, or what we call a petit mal. He had to give up his profession. There is another extremely unusual phenomenon which I read about, and it's called musicophilia. It's quite interesting. There was a man speaking at a telephone booth outside a railway station, and he had a cardiac arrest. There was another man waiting to use the telephone booth. He was a doctor. He resuscitated the individual completely. The man got completely well. The man who had a cardiac arrest was quite well. In about 10, 12 days' time, he was able to move about. And then a peculiar phenomenon happened. He started hearing music in his brain. And they were all thought that he was hallucinating. And he was not particularly interested in classical music, in Western classical, but he heard Western classical music, particularly by a particular composer, playing all the time in his brain. And he couldn't understand it. He then learned to notate the music, and he notated the music after that with his own hand of what he was playing. He was particularly fond of Chopin, and he was particularly fond of a particular musician called Ashkenazi, playing Chopin. So he became really a classical musician. And in course of time, in 6 months' time, he gives a recital which was appreciated by all people who heard him. Isn't that amazing? It just goes to show that there is very, very little we know of the brain. It is one organ in the body about which we, by and large, are fairly ignorant. And then let me tell you of the third very important and very unusual one, called the Mozart effect. The Mozart effect. Mozart was a genius with regard to composition and playing the piano. He started playing at the age of 4, and he composed great music, mind you, at the age of 6. Unbelievable. It really makes you believe, for those who are unbelievers, that there must be a God above who must have given this man, this little boy, this talent. What is the Mozart effect? If you take little children and play Mozart every day to them for some days, weeks or so, perhaps weeks, you find that there's a marked increasing effect on cognition, which is proved, documented, compared to a group of students who was playing some other mundane, commonplace music. And this music lasted this improvement in cognition lasted for quite some time, but did not last permanently. It sooner or later went away. But what would happen, for example, if little children were played this again and again every day for a long time? Would it perhaps affect cognition on a long-term basis? Not just Mozart alone, other music as well. This has also been shown with Hindustani music. The sarod, for example. If played again and again to a group of students, it was found their cognition also improved. In other words, music affects cognition. And it is important because those who are able to experience music frequently or musical experiences frequently, perhaps would have better cognition than those who do not. It hasn't been proved, but it is a point worth mentioning. Now, where in the brain is music heard? You see speech, spatial recognition, logic is in a right-handed person is in the left hemisphere, left half of the brain. But music, by and large, is appreciated on the right side of the brain, the right hemisphere, which controls emotion, song, and music. And this has been shown. For example, a man who is paralyzed by a stroke affecting the left half of the brain can appreciate music. The greatest is a story of a musician, a composer, a nondescript composer, who had sensory aphasia to a lesion in the left temporal lobe. And it was found that though he had sensory aphasia, that means he could not understand the meaning of the spoken word. He could compose, not only understand music, appreciate music, but he could compose music. And he composed a full symphony in Western music, which Shostakovich said was excellent. This is indeed remarkable. Stammering, for example, is related to the left half of the brain. But if a stammerer is suddenly moved by something and he knows song, he can break into song and will not stutter or stammer at all. Because the appreciation of music and song is in the right cerebral hemisphere. So it's an interesting thing to remember. And finally, I must tell you the funny story of a disturbance in the brain produced by diffuse damage to the brain. This was reported by Oliver Sacks, who's written quite a lovely books on this aspect of music, where a man mistook a hat for his wife. Yes, what happened was the man could see, but he could not recognize what he saw. But amazingly, his musical sensibility remained the same, good. So that, he was so lost that he would be singing all the time. He would be singing when shaving, singing when wearing his clothes, singing when bathing. It was his only contact to the outside world, which otherwise was completely shattered. And yet, music sensibility prevailed. I want to tell you now something about the power of music. It is now well known that music can increase intellectuality, perceptibility, and increase the personal growth and the social well-being of children and young adults. Susan Hallag is the lady, who's written a beautiful book on that and a beautiful treatise on that. And it's remarkable. And how does it do that? The most important thing she noted was that music and the appreciation of music and the experience of music can affect other cerebral functions. That's remarkable. Now, as I said, we know very little about the brain, but let me tell you some basic facts, those who are not doctors. The basic cell is a neuron. And there are 100 billion neurons in the brain. Can you believe it? In that small box of the skull, within the brain, there are 100 billion neurons. And each of these neurons has 1,000 interconnections. So you can see how complex the network of fibers and cells within the brain is. Now, how is it that musical appreciation can affect her cerebral function? Susan Hallag has a view. It says this is because the cerebral cortex self-organizes itself. Let me just explain that. When you hear music, it is transmitted by the interconnecting neurons. Interconnecting neurons through interconnecting fibers, after a length of time, become reinforced, become modified for the better, become fine-tuned to a point where the cortex self-organizes itself so it is capable of processing information that it relieves. And this self-organization of the cortex produced by musical experiences can be transferred to to other activities. For example, music and speech are close to each other, and the processes involving them are similar to each other. Therefore, self-organization of the cortex produced through music can affect language. If it affects language, it affects speech, it affects writing. And that, of course, is unquestionably a great advantage. Isn't it remarkable that music appreciation in the cortex produces a change in the cortex which can affect other cerebral functions? It reminds me of the great researchers who showed that you have jumping genes in bacteria. So a gene from a nasty bacteria can jump into a bacterium which has reasonably normal genes and make that bacterium resistant to antibiotics. It's amazing. But this is, I think, illustrates very well the power of music. Then we come to music and medicine. Music has a calming effect. Relieves stress, has a soothing effect, reduces pain, has an effect which allows you to reduce medications given for pain. It is used, therefore, in many chronic conditions. Cancer, for example. Patients benefit when they hear music all the time. Any chronic condition benefits from that. How does it do that? It reduces the stress hormones. It can reduce the blood pressure. It can reduce the pulse rate. It can reduce skin conductance. It can reduce body temperature. The diminution of stress hormones, therefore, relieves stress in individuals who are stressed. And who is not stressed in the world of today? So the world of music can reduce stress for everyone, all of us concerned, if we are good enough to listen to it for a length of time. It's used preoperatively to calm the patient, make sure that the pulse rate and the blood pressure do not rise. It is used post-operative for the same purpose. It is used by the surgeon intraoperatively. It's used by the surgeon intraoperatively because it has a calming effect on the surgeon also. Most important from the point of view of medicine, it has a remarkable effect on movement. I think movement is extremely important. Movement activates the fibers controlling movement. Movement particularly, like for example you walk outside, keeps you in touch with the external environment and therefore is also responsible for cognition. Now how I, as somebody who practices medicine and observes things, notice this. Take an elderly man who is reasonably all right in his head, reasonably well. He falls down, he has a fracture, a bad fracture, and he's laid up in bed for 6 weeks. In bed, no movement at all. When he gets up, you find there is a marked deficiency in his cognition. And you're surprised. What is he doing? He's forgetting everything. He doesn't know anything. The reason is lack of movement. So, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot stress to you the importance of movement. And the simplest way you can move is to walk. That is why walking is such a healthy exercise. It stimulates, you're moving, it helps your cognition, it is truly a worthy exercise. Now there are certain diseases, I don't know whether I should get into that, but for example, even stuttering and stammering, for example, is a movement disorder in a way. Music helps it. There are rare diseases called Turkish disease, which was described by Turkey in which you have tics, sometimes violent tics. At least one related to is a motor tic and one related to speech or the vocal cords. But they have many tics. So they may be screaming sometimes as a tic or making funny odd movements all the time as a result of tic, and extremely exhausting. Music helps them. An amazing thing, listening to music is not half as great as playing music. Now, if a person has this particular disease and he's learned to play an instrument and he's made to play that, this particular manifestations of this disease is much reduced. There are other movement disorders also. I don't want to go into that. It's widely technical and I don't need to say, but most important for them is the use of music in Parkinson's disease. It's a great help in Parkinson's disease. Movement, besides walking, musical movements to music, dancing, and other musical effort. People think that, just walking is the right thing for, but there is much more to it than that. If, for example, you walk to music, that's fine. But you can have musical exercises. You can raise your voice from like that. You're using your vocal cords, and the vocal cords do not function well in patients with Parkinson's disease. Or, for example, musical activity together, moving your hands and legs to music. These are all things which one should advise patients with Parkinson's disease. And repeated auditory activity is very useful. You therefore have repeated auditory stimulation. Now, it's easy to have repeated, or the simplest way, but a rather dull way, is a metronome which gives time. And you can use that metronome to mark time. But the best way is to have a musical expression, which is more or less in conjunction with the steps that the patient takes. And he takes those steps according to time. So the very shuffled steps can be made a little bigger. It helps in gait, it helps in balance, it helps in walking, and it helps the patient not to suddenly freeze, to suddenly do. I think, to me, the greatest advice on music therapy is in patients with Parkinson's disease, where repeated auditory stimulation, besides the usual walking and dancing, etc., repeated auditory stimulation so regulated according to the patient's needs and the patient's step and the amount of steps he makes and the length of the step helps Parkinson's disease a great deal. Is there any other? There are other very many reasons in many conditions in medicine. It is so important now, why? First of all, let me tell you, how does music act in medicine? How is it? What is the mechanism of it? The first mechanism is that it stimulates the reward center. The reward center is just not the hypothalamus, it's the amygdala nucleus, the thalamus, and even the frontal lobes. These are the reward centers. When they are stimulated, they ask for more. Music sometimes gives you a real thrill. Good music, great music gives a little thrill. And that thrill stimulates the reward center. And the reward center wants more, so he wants more music. Just as the person is addicted to cocaine. Why does he go on wanting cocaine? Why does he go on eating chocolates? Why does he go on eating smoking? Why does he go on drinking alcohol? All these are addictive factors which give a thrill, stimulating the reward center. That's why you get addicted to it. The second is a modulation of the brainstem reflexes, so that the music acts on the brainstem reflexes, slowing the heart, reducing the blood pressure, reducing skin conductance, reducing temperature. These are all brainstem reflexes. And music acts through the brainstem modifying them. But the most important of all, which is a recent piece of research, music acts on the immunological system. This is fantastic. The immunological. Music is supposed to act, and there are many studies on this, mind you. I can't report them, but I've read some of them. Music is supposed to act on the neuroendocrine center. The neuroendocrine center is like a conductor of the immune system of the body. So when it acts on this neuroendocrine center, which controls immune reactions, and if your immune reactions are stimulated, it is a good sign. You may recover early, easy. So that's a point worth remembering. And finally, music affects social awareness. Social awareness is important. Social awareness is good for mental health, and music encourages that. That's why music is performed sometimes in a group, very often in a group. And it is believed that there are hormones, finally, can you believe it, that regulate that. One of them is oxytocin, and the other is vasopressin. It is said that you know a fair deal of the neuroanatomy of music, but we know very little about the neurochemistry of music. Finally, last, I think, but not the least, something which I'm very fond of. What is the meaning of music? What is it meant to be? Can it affect morals? Can it affect character? The answer is yes. And this is believed to the work of Plato, the great Greek philosopher, who said good music affects good morals and character because it infuses order and harmony into the soul. And he also said that bad music has a reverse effect. Bad music has a reverse effect. So what is good music? I think if you can look at it, and Plato looked at it this way, great music. Great music is absolutely something which sends you into a trance. It makes you commune within yourself. It communes with the Supreme Being. Great, transcendental music. Let's call it that. Good music is one which makes you happy, which helps you, which makes you forget your troubles and your worries. You can fight difficulties and problems that affect you. Then you have medium music, which you hear in lifts, you hear otherwise, which you can do your work anywhere and you can hear it and forget about it. But bad music is one which is raucous, loud, noise, not music. And often in that noise you hear a voice mouthing vulgarities and profanities. Can you ban this now? The answer is no. Not in this world, where there is a great deal of free thought, free words, and free deeds, short of murder and grave robbery. You're free to do anything. So how can you ban it? And what the proponents of such music say? Music evolves, they say. Music has evolved. So what's wrong with it? This is how music evolves. Everything evolves. Hasn't art evolved? But there's a big difference. Big difference. For example, the great music of Bach has not been supplanted by Mozart, and the great music of Mozart has not been supplanted by Beethoven, and the great music of Beethoven has not been supplanted by Shostakovich. Music evolves, but the evolution of music should refine your senses and sensibilities, not poison them. The same in Indian music. The great hymns that were there evolved into the ragas, and they're still evolving. But they refine your senses and they refine your sensibilities. That is the important thing. Now I ask you, and I've asked myself, what is it that an art which has no connection to the outside world, which has nothing to do with language, so that it can impart no knowledge of the outside world or anything else, which doesn't preach a doctrine. What is it, why is it that that art has so interwoven itself into the fabric of human thought and human psyche that it has become part of human beings? Why? How? That is the question. And the philosopher answers it. He says that music mirrors the inner stream of your life, a stream that flows continuously from birth till the end of human existence. That is what he says. Of course, the music is like other arts, any other art, any other, because it is so aesthetic. But what is so different? Difference is you cannot see it. You can understand it, but you cannot translate it. You can comprehend it again, but again, you cannot translate it. And it gives you no outside knowledge of anything of this world or anything else. In fact, and this is so important, music has been equated sometimes to great mathematics. Can you believe it? Before I forget, I must say, there are two endeavors, shall I say, in the world where art and science mix. The first, of course, is medicine. Medicine is as much an art as it is a science. And the second, they say, is music and mathematics. You know, a great, great philosopher, Wittgenstein, I may not have heard of him, but I'll tell you. He said that when I read Bertrand Russell's Principia Mathematica, Bertrand Russell wrote that great work on mathematics called Principia Mathematica. He said, when I read this, it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful that I could liken it only to music. And another man, again a philosopher, in his Lowellian lecture said, modern mathematics today, to my mind, is indeed one of the greatest creations of the human spirit. The only one that can compete with it is music. Now, my interest in this was when I was reading the life of Ramanujan. Hardy had called Ramanujan over to Cambridge and they both worked together, both good musicians, only Ramanujan was a genius. His equations have still not been completely solved. There are many which remain to be solved. But Hardy was a clever man, and this is what he said about mathematics. He said it has to have generality, which means it has no frontiers. It has to have depth, which it must not be mundane. It must act exactly as it should. It must have unexpectedness, and it must have economy. The same holds for music. Generality, depth, not an ordinary tune. Inevitability, it has to end in that manner. There's no way in which this music could end. Look at the difference. Inevitability in mathematics is logic. Inevitability in music is art. And unexpectedness is the beauty of a mind which can change tunes and chords and whatever it is, and etc. And it is also something linked to inevitability. Economy doesn't apply very much to music, particularly there are some composers like Wagner or Mahler, for example, in Western music, who cannot be called economically. But that doesn't matter. So what is great music? Great music is composed by great minds. It's telling you everlasting truths. Minds, composers, who go deep into their psyche. Deep, so that emotions and experience which are hidden are brought to the surface and expressed in beautiful forms of sound. That is what great music is. I want to end by just saying, I wish I could hear music much more than I used to. But I think I will. But when I used to hear very great music, what did it do to me? I sincerely, frankly felt an inner feeling that there is another world than the one we live in. I felt that I could commune with my inner conscious state. The stream that the philosopher said starts in the beginning and ends at your end of your existence. And I could commune perhaps with the Supreme Being at times, lost in a trance, hypnotized. In doing so, music adds greater meaning to life. A transcendental blessing that enhances, uplifts the spirit of man. Thank you.
Dr. Udwadia will now inaugurate the documentary. Thank you so much, Dr. Udwadia.
Rhythmic and melodic chords have played a significant role in the evolutionary process of the animal kingdom. Birds use melodic sounds and visual signals to communicate and attract mates. However, humans are the only species to use music to express emotions of sorrow, dance, worship, remembrance, etc., whenever they fancy. Evolution of music. Discoveries of 40,000-year-old bone flutes in Germany. And 12,000-year-old cave paintings in Bhimbetka rocks of India prove the existence of music and dance even before the Stone Age. Origins of music, how did it begin? When humans stood erect and walked on two legs, our voice box dropped lower in the throat. Our voices became clearer, stronger, and richer. That was the beginning of the music language, an emotional proto-language. The voice box became humanity's first musical instrument. When we speak, the variable pitch and volume of our voice is like music. Without intonations, our speech would be flat and lifeless.
Pick up that phone and speak the words that I have taught you, and I will make you richer. Pick up the phone and start dialing. I want you to deal with your problems by becoming rich.
Music was born not in instruments, but in the very body we carry. A 5,000 years journey. Our sages taught Rigveda in oral tradition. They added rhythmic meter and musical notes to help memorize shlokas. Thus was born Samaveda, the oldest tradition of music. Archaeologists have emphasized that Indian classical music is the oldest musical tradition in the world. They have discovered remarkable musical instruments in the ruins of the Indus Valley civilization. This shows the creativity, depth of knowledge, and intelligence of our ancestors. Indian music flows like a river. Every artist paints the same rag differently. Improvisation is its soul fueled by feelings. Music as a social glue. Music has been an integral part of every civilization, not only as an art form, but also as a cultural, social, religious, and spiritual influence. Why is music present in every festival, every wedding, every celebration, every prayer? Because music is the glue that binds people together. When we watch a devotee singing bhajans, the singer seems to be in a trance. As if he has become one with the music. When we sing or play music, especially in a group, something magical happens inside the brain. Music surges dopamine, happy hormone creating sensation of reward and pleasure. It floods the brain with oxytocin, the bonding or cuddling hormone, the same that flows when a mother holds her baby. It surges endorphin, nature's painkiller, that reduces pain and lifts our mood. It secretes serotonin, hormone of tranquility and peace. It reduces stress hormone, cortisol, buffering its harmful effect on the body. No wonder bhajans, qawwalis, or kirtans often take people into trance. Without drugs, without alcohol, just music. Music makes strangers sway together, sing together, feel together, belonging in social survival. Music is a lifeline. What is sound? Vibrations that travel through a medium of air in the form of pressure waves are perceived as sound when it enters our brain through the ears. The human brain can only perceive a limited range of sound frequencies, from 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. They are deaf to any frequencies below and above this range. It's your brain which interprets the sound. Till then, they are just pressure waves. What is music? A series of sounds perceived as pleasing is called music. An organized cyclic pattern is called rhythm or beats. Melody is an aesthetically arranged sequence of musical notes. Let's understand the technical component of music. The brain scans show that when music enters the ears, it sets the whole brain on fire, lighting up areas of memories, movements, emotions, and imagination. Different elements of music evoke different feelings in the brain. Timbre is the color of sound. The sound of a trumpet is perceived as bold. While the sound of a flute is perceived as gentle. Tempo and rhythm. Faster tempos excite us, while slower tempos calm us down. Pitch. Even a 3-month-old child can tell when the pitch changes. That's how deeply wired music is. Scales. Major scales sound happy and uplifting. Minor scales evoke sadness.
I can find is the love that I found ever since you've been around. Your love's put me at the top of the world. Been around, nothing to do but frown. Rainy days, Mondays always get me down.
Loudness. The same sound with a higher or lower amplitude evokes different feelings. Harmony. 2 or more notes played simultaneously can sound soothing if consonant or create tension if dissonant. Great composers use both to send the listeners on an emotional trip. Unraveling the symphony within, marvel of nature, the brain's musical network.
Let us take a journey into the depths of human brain, truly a marvel of nature. Despite weighing just 1.5 kilogram, this soft, folded, spongy organ is the seat of your thoughts, your emotions, and your identity. Within this structure lies 100 billion neurons, some capable of firing at the astonishing speed of 400 kilometers per hour, surpassing even the fastest computer, yet slow down to a snail's speed when required. Your brain can store half a petabyte of memory, which is equivalent to 1 million books and 3 million hours of video. Even when you sleep, your brain is active. When we dream, our memories get consolidated and deep sleep rejuvenates the brain and body for the next day. Music in particular serves as a natural tranquilizer, promoting natural sleep without a need for a pill. Remember, without brain, there is no consciousness, no sight, no sound, no movement, no pleasure, no pain, no art, no music.
The phenomenon of amusia.
It may be surprising, but some individuals are unable to enjoy music. Approximately 2 to 3% of people suffer from a condition called amusia, music deafness, an inability to perceive, process, or produce music, despite having normal hearing and cognitive abilities.
A dance of hemispheres.
Our brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, connected by a thick band of nerve fiber called corpus callosum. Left hemisphere is associated with logic, language, order, numbers, rhythm, and structure. In context of music, it manages rhythm, tempo, and lyrics. Conversely, right hemisphere deals with imagination, dreams, feelings, creativity, art, and holistic reasoning. It is responsible for processing pitch, the melody, and harmony in music. The musician's brain. The brain of a trained musician differs significantly from that of an untrained person. Studies show that trained musicians have a larger brain areas dealing with memory, movement, coordination, and processing music. They flaunt a thicker corpus callosum connecting right and left hemispheres more robustly. Their brains are literally rewired for musical expertise. When you watch a Mr. O performing, you witness the brain executing its most complex multitasking feats. Engaging both hands, reading and interpreting musical scores, and simultaneously playing and listening to music. What happens inside the brain when we listen to music? Brain scans show that when music hits the brain, it sets the whole brain in fire, illuminating the areas of memory, movements, emotions, and imagination. Our ears capture the sound waves, convert them into electrical impulses, and transmit them to brain where the real magic unfolds. Within this orchestral system, each part of the brain plays its role in creating symphony. The musical brain, lobes and layers. Frontal lobe and prefrontal cortex. This region acts as the chief executive of your brain, handling musical procession, anticipating beats, and melodic progression. It also helps in composing music and adding meaningful like lyrics to the songs. Rare part of the frontal lobe is responsible for muscles dexterity, known as muscle memory. In children, exposure to music acts like a brain fertilizer, enhancing intelligence, sociability, and sharpness. Damage here can lead to musical anhedonia, a condition where one cannot derive pleasure from music. Parietal lobe gathers sensation from your fingers, eyes, ears as we play or sing. It also provides an essential feedback to the musician during performance. Temporal lobe is known as the sound laboratory. The right temporal lobe processes melody, emotional tones, timbre, and holistic understanding. Damage here can result in a melodia or melody deafness. The left temporal lobe is involved in rhythm, timing, temporal sequencing, and musical syntax. It also analyzes the pacing, frequency, and intensity of music. Lesion here may lead to arrhythmias, a deficit in rhythm perception. Occipital lobe. This is the visual center of your brain, aiding musicians to read notes and imagine notes. Cerebellum. Tucked at the back of your brain, the cerebellum serves as your internal timekeeper, ensuring smooth and precise rhythm during dance or instrumental performance. Damage to cerebellum can disrupt both physical and mental timing completely. Motor cortex and basal ganglia allow us to tap, clap, and sway to music. Limbic system. The music has a massive impact on your feelings and actions because it speaks directly to your limbic system. The limbic system is a primitive part of the brain that handles emotions, motivations, memory, and survival. When you listen to your favorite music, your brain increases a happy hormone called dopamine, which activates a nucleus accumbens, your reward center, providing a pleasure akin to enjoying a chocolate, winning a lottery, or experiencing intimacy. Nature has packed this pleasure to biological acts of food and sex to ensure survival of species. Music plays a role in survival by binding people together and strengthening community bonds. Amygdala is the brain's emotional switchboard. When you listen to your favorite music, it instantly creates a feeling of joy, fear, sadness. It also helps to store your personal events and memories linked to your favorite tunes. Where does it store? In hippocampus, the brain's memory vault. Simply, even imagining your favorite songs can vividly evoke associated emotions and memories. Tunes which are disliked are automatically dumped and forgotten. Hypothalamus is your transformer, which translates your feelings into physical sensation. Nostalgic music, for instance, can cause faster heartbeat, dilate your pupils, and give goosebumps.
Resilience and neuroplasticity. Stroke, trauma, degenerative diseases like dementia, or infections affect ability to listen, interpret, or play music. However, our brain has remarkable adaptability and resilience. With the help of music, the damaged neurons can be replaced through neuroplasticity. Recovery may be slow and time-consuming, but it's worth it. Music's early influence. The impact of music begins even before birth. Research by the National Institute of Mental Health has proved that a child in the womb responds to music. This early exposure can significantly enhance a child's brain development that lasts years after birth. Premature babies are known to develop problems like impaired attention, emotional and behavioral issues. In a neuroimaging study, preterm infants exposed to music therapy in the neonatal intensive care unit showed positive impact on the maturation of their brain regions. Children who begin their musical journeys early often exhibit enhanced wiring between their brain hemispheres. This empowers them with superior memory, learning, and social abilities, a true testament to music's transformative power. Music influences us without we realizing it. A study by Ronald Millman proved that in supermarkets, slow background music made customers linger longer and spend more time. In wine shops, playing French or German classical music subtly nudged buyers towards choosing expensive wines from those countries. However, with fast music, shoppers opted for cheaper wines. Harmony of music and cinema. Can you imagine a movie without songs or background music?
ये कौन हंसता है फूलों में छुपकर बाहर बेचैन है किस धुन पर.
Fast rhythms can lift our spirits, while slow, gentle tunes stir tenderness or longing. Music doesn't just support the story, it hijacks our emotions. Often our favorite songs from a film stay in your mind long after the movie is forgotten. Even instruments tell their own stories. The flute whispers romance. The violin evokes melancholy. And sometimes silence itself builds the deepest suspense.
Go ahead. Make my day.
When music hurts. But music is not always harmless. Discordant, harsh sounds can cause stress. Very loud music through headphones can damage hearing forever. Sad songs may worsen depression in sensitive people. And some artists promote drugs, claiming they enhance music. True music needs no poison. Music therapy, ancient wisdom, modern healing. Music therapy roots back around 3,000 years. With our ancient physicians, Sushrut and Charak, employing it to treat patients in coma. Over the last 3 decades, scientific research has transformed music therapy into a recognized field of healing the ailing brain. It is most effective when used alongside medication or psychotherapy and distinguished by its lack of side effects. Universities even now offer degrees in music therapy. Qualified music therapists assess individuals' preferences and tailor sessions accordingly. conditions that respond to music therapy. Music is helpful in an incredible range of conditions. Mental health, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, schizophrenia, substance abuse, neurological, stroke, brain injury, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, cerebral palsy, and other dementias, developmental disorders, autism, learning disabilities, coping with developmental delays, physical health, motor skills, chemotherapy, hypertension, migraine, and reducing pain and dampening harmful effects due to stress, communication, enhancement of verbal and non-verbal skills, unborn and premature babies, promoting better brain development. Even the reputed scientific journal, The Brain, reported that stroke patients who listened to music showed far greater recovery in verbal memory and cognition compared to those who did not. Look at this patient with Parkinson's, walking without music and now walking with music. Music can loosen up stiff limbs of Parkinson's patients, enabling them to dance and move with surprising ease. 102 years old Florence has been suffering from an advanced stage of Alzheimer's dementia. Despite her severe memory loss and inability to read the notations, Florence was able to remember and play several songs she had learnt in her younger days.
Can you play Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
I think so.
Yeah? Let's hear it.
Contrary to old beliefs, modern brain scans have demonstrated that music can repair the brain through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, rewire, and regenerate even after stroke, dementia, or injury. Music helps from new neural pathways, restoring speech, movement, and memory. The timeless power of music. Our ancestors understood this truth, and now science confirms it. A child who sings learns faster, remembers more deeply, and connects more meaningfully with others. If music can mend the broken brain, imagine the limitless potential it unlocks in every growing mind. It shapes our minds, heals the wounds we cannot see, and binds us together across generations. Let us recognize, celebrate, and employ the power of music in our life. Music empowers us before our first breath and stays with us until our last breath. Music is our lifeline.
I think I'm truly speechless how to describe that. But I think your clapping said it all, right? So let's bring onto the stage the stalwarts, the brain and the music. Dr. Ashit Sheth, Atul Merchant, please come on the stage. And this documentary could not have been done without two wonderful teams. The voice behind this, Mona's Ranina. Mona's, please come on the stage. Gurveer, I know you're hiding somewhere. No, come here. Please bring your team, wonderful team. While they come, and believe me, they're all shy. Can you believe that? They are coming. In case you're wondering and wanting to see this again, I have a really small version, and you all have the larger version. Please take a moment to go ahead and subscribe. You can watch this on YouTube, in case you want to watch it again, okay? Thank you so much. All right, Monas, where are you? Oh, there you are, sorry.
Thank you so much.
Gurveer, we're waiting for you. Please give a round of applause to the entire Gurveer's team and Monas's team. And if you liked this event, those are Mr. Beenu and Mr. Vinod. Mr. Vinod, please come. This is what makes an event successful. And for the last words, I'm going to give it to Dr. Sheth.
And thank you, all of you, for coming here for this audience and provide us with a lot of encouragement. Let me tell you my next audiovisual or documentaries on ADHD. My family has suffered from ADHD, so I can make a really personal documentary on attention deficit hyperkinetic disorder. Wait for it. Probably some months later, we'll have another show. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. And I hope you have a very good night. Take care.